When it comes to all-out warfare, no franchise better encapsulates this than that of Battlefield. The sheer exhilaration that the games provide you with when you charge enemy fortifications with all your teammates by your side, tanks backing you up while planes fight above, it is truly amazing. And I was introduced to the franchise with Battlefield 1, so I didn't really have any knowledge of the series besides it being large open warfare. But oh boy, what an introduction that was, with a different setting than what any other AAA shooters were doing at the time, to how intense the matches could get, with the introduction of operations, to the great marketing for it, and the fact that it kicked that year's iteration of Call of Duty's ass so hard that its trailer became YouTube's most disliked video for a while. So of course with all that, I immediately became a fan, and playing it was truly magical for me. It was a multiplayer experience I had never felt before, so of course it was the first game I raged at so hard that I almost broke my controller. Eventually, when Battlefield 5 was announced, I was hyped for it, and compared to many other people, I didn't really get any negative impression from the trailer, since it was only a trailer. But once I got my hands on the game for Christmas of 2018, it was clear to me that the game wasn't amazing. It was very bare bones at release, confusing as hell to navigate, and surprisingly had a level of ineptitude I did not expect.
Yeah. Who the fuck puts white text on, and without even a black border or any kind of help to read these things, on white maps and white backgrounds and bright backgrounds?
Simply put, it just felt a lot like a step back for the franchise, and eventually it tried chasing popular trends as a last-ditch effort to keep people playing and invested. But of course that went as well as Ubisoft with their own Battle Royale, and so the game faded into obscurity, basically being remembered as that one Battlefield game that got bogged down in politics and released unfinished. So, as I waited for the next game to bring the series back to greatness, I bided my time with Battlefront 2 and the previous Battlefield, wondering what the series would do to reclaim its FPS throne from COD. But soon enough, the announcement for Battlefield 2042 got my hype levels running at maximum capacity. I could not wait to play this on newer hardware and see what the next evolution of the franchise would be like on the 9th generation of consoles. And then the game was released.
Yeah, but I didn't.
What?
Holy.
I almost died. I'm inside the building.
You clipped into the building.
I can't.
Now, I have not played 2042, nor do I have any interest in playing it, but with the game being released in a state that would make CD Projekt Red blush, fundamental parts of the series being changed and replaced with worse systems, and developers not working on it fast enough to make it stable, the player base started dropping like flies, flocking to other games in previous iterations, to the point where Battlefield 5 had more people playing it than 2042. And that made me wonder, was this game truly as bad as I remember? And it wasn't. After playing for hours and hours, I realized that the game was not only not as bad as many made it out to be, but it actually made really good improvements to the Battlefield formula, and that's what I'm here to talk about today. To look back at a game that was somewhat overhated and had some good things about it that were buried beneath all the controversies that bogged it down. But as a good way to get this whole thing started, we can start by talking about the first thing that Battlefield 5 improves on, in my opinion, is the class system. Specifically, how each of the 4 classes acts and how they've been altered in somewhat small ways that help benefit the game immensely. Firstly, the Assault class. Although not having the most drastic of changes made to it, Assault has basically been made more creatively effective in its role, mostly due to the new and insane gadgets they've been given, such as a goddamn flamethrower. Yeah, so DICE was crazy enough to figure out a way to translate the Flame Trooper from BF1 to here, and honestly, it's really welcome. It's a solid way to push enemies off of points and to flush out others from tight corners. It's just really fun to use and makes everything feel more chaotic than it already is. Another unique addition is the Fliegerfaust, a personal anti-aircraft weapon, which out of all the new Assault gadgets, I find to be the best and most helpful one. I'll touch more on this aspect later, but planes could be a massive irritant, especially when all anti-aircraft guns have been destroyed or taken by enemies, making a lot of fights one-sided. Here though, giving that ability to assault can help ward off planes about to bomb points, sometimes actually killing them. Plus it can make for really damn cool moments when you do stuff like that. And of course, rocket launchers and grenade launchers are still here, so the assault class is pretty much made even better at being the best offensive class. Some very notable changes come to the medic class, where here they're made even more important because of two reasons. Automatic healing doesn't give people all their health, and med pouches. In previous battlefields, people could take cover for a short amount of time and regain all their health back. However, that's not the case here. You still regain health, but just not all of it, and the amount regenerated depends on the amount of health you still have. Thus, you have one med pouch, which gives you your health back, and that's a great thing for overall gameplay, since it now gets players to think more about what to do. You could rush a control point, but you're more likely to die in a firefight since you don't have any med packs to help you. Or you could wait and take cover for a medic to come back and resupply you, then charge in. It's a great addition to the overall flow of gameplay, and it makes up a little bit for the medics not being the sole revivers. However, they still have unlimited med packs and can heal themselves constantly, so there's that. But speaking of the revive system, medics are now able to revive teammates as much as possible, and I'm a fan of the change, since it didn't really matter in previous entries how many times you could do it without resupplying, since you could just get gunned down immediately just trying to bring someone back and making the attempt rather pointless. Whereas here, it takes just a little bit longer to come back. But that's balanced out well with the unlimited revives, so I don't think it makes it unfair, and honestly it makes medics even more helpful, especially with the fact that they added in the squad revives. The support class, though, is pretty much mostly unchanged out of the whole lot. However, there are still some minor but good changes made to them. One is removing the repair tool and making it universal for all of the support classes. This now allows them to still help in fights with offensive weapons while repairing and resupplying, because it was pretty irritating having to sacrifice a whole gadget slot to solely repair vehicles. But I'm happy that's no longer the case. Plus, they now have like a shit ton of different vehicle explosives they can use now, so that's cool. And both the support and assault classes get this really cool lunge mine, which pretty much has you do a bayonet charge in BF1, but is pretty much suicidal. And although this feature is not exclusive to the support class, everyone can build fortifications around the map, with support just being able to build it much faster and do some repairs to certain ones like anti-air guns, which, call me a fan of the change, it makes the Battlefield games feel more like an actual battlefield. But the biggest changes, however, are very much for the recon class, where they're now the only ones able to do traditional spotting. You see, in previous games, there was a dedicated spotting button, where if an enemy was in your sights, you could reveal their location to your allies for a limited time. Personally, I thought this system was kind of broken, because essentially you could just press the spot button as much as you wanted with no penalty, and it'd be irritating just trying to move to a different spot and then immediately getting shot at. But here, however, that was replaced with the regular ping system, where they still spot enemies, but only where they were last spotted. The Recon class is now technically the only true spotter in the game, with equipment like the flare gun and spot scope, which gives a greater emphasis on the class, instead of them just being snipers, but also lookouts, which makes them even more viable from a distance, rather than trying to go Rambo style, getting 360 no-scope kills, or fighting alongside infantry trying to charge into control points. Other classes can still spot as well, but in more passive ways, like the support who can spot enemies when they fully suppress them, or the assault class can by hitting them at a certain distance. Oh, and a quick side note too, even your minimap will show you when you're spotted, which I think is really helpful since you don't get pumped full of lead every half a second.
You're on, dude.
Please don't make me.
The squad system was one of the defining things that made Battlefield special, since it gave players a more direct way of working together to complete objectives and earn extra points while playing together. It also made playing with friends much easier since you could get rewarded for being idiots together, and still being in a party with each other. Now, Battlefield 5 builds off of what came before, where in previous games the only thing squad members could do is spawn on each other, earn extra points when doing things together, or mark which objectives to go to, which was only for the squad leader. It was a good system, but it felt like there could be a little bit more added to it to help squad play and overall gameplay. That's where 5 adds the features such as everyone in a squad being able to revive each other. And I know what you're probably thinking. Wait a minute, wouldn't that take away from the medic class since they were the only ones able to revive before? Well, yes, but actually no. You see, medics still have the ability to revive anyone on the same side, not just squad mates, on top of the fact that they revive allies much faster than any of the other classes can. So medics are still safe, and if you're in a game where your team has little to no medics, you don't have to worry as much so long as you stay near your squad. The biggest improvement made here, in my opinion, is the ability for the squad leaders to call in support. As your squad performs any actions like killing opponents, destroying vehicles, healing allies, or anything, you gain points, which your squad leader can use to call in supply drops for the whole team, deploy smoke bomb strikes, call in vehicles, or my personal favorite, the JB2 rocket. The overall addition of this feature massively lends itself to the game, since it now gives a purpose to all those extra points you would get working as a squad, as well as giving more of a reason to squad leaders than just,
No, wait a minute! Protect Objective Alpha! Mr. Ben, let's go!
Now, this may be a bit of an odd point to make, but the movement of your character is extremely important to any game. And when looking at how you were able to move back in previous battlefields compared to here, I think the movement was significantly improved. The boost in running speed was a great change, since it helped players get into the fight quicker and traversing large maps more effectively. Because, let's be real, trying to run large distances on a battlefield map was a waste of time. Other previous movement options were improved, such as sliding, where in previous outings you had to be running and pressing the crouch button in order to perform a slide, and this could be pretty damn irritating, since you might want to just do a quick crouch to stop yourself in place, or perhaps just want to do a crouch down in order to sneak up on enemies. It'll instead turn into you trying to slide into the enemy's DMs more than anything.
Good evening.
Instead, you have to double tap the crouch button in order to slide, which I think makes it all around more effective, especially since it's paired with the biggest change here, the ability to crouch run, which is the best added movement feature where you can keep running but keep your head down and not lose as much momentum. It's a terrific way to give players more ways of dodging bullets and keeping the fight going. It also helps when you're trying to just duck behind some cover a little bit, so you can take out enemies and crouch down whenever you want and it doesn't seem as awkward. Plus, it helps those trying to pull off a solid snake actually getting behind enemies quicker and not as impaired as someone crawling would. And if someone is crawling, they now have the ability to crawl backwards with their feet forward, which makes the movement less awkward and not as irritating when trying to push yourself up against a wall and your legs keep pushing you back. I hated that, and this small addition makes all the difference. Out of all the things Battlefield 5 did, I think the significant changes made to vehicles were the best. Because in games prior, vehicles could be a little too overpowered to some extent. This mostly has to do with the fact that they had unlimited ammo, so planes could do unlimited strafe runs on people below, and tanks could instantly, from far away, rack up over 75 plus kills, with enemies not being able to hit them being out of range. And you would be losing your mind just sitting in the corner on an objective getting bombarded every single time. What Battlefield 5 does to fix this is to give vehicles limited ammunition, which I think is an absolute godsend, and it helps both the person in the vehicle and others around them. So now resupply stations are scattered around the map in specific areas for tanks on both sides to fall back to, in order to get repairs and ammo, while planes on the other hand have to go back to spawn areas and fly through a couple of posts to get supplies, if you can make it without crashing, of course. This helps the flow of combat so well, since it forces vehicle drivers to not fire with reckless abandon. Additionally, when they do run out of ammo and have to fall back to resupply stations, it gives soldiers some more time to tighten up their defenses when they come back. This goes for planes as well, and in some ways is a little bit more important, since if any team can't get to anti-aircraft guns, or have their planes in the air, those on the ground are bound to get absolutely shredded. Another unexpectedly welcome change was the camera movement, not immediately being the movement of the barrel in tanks. And what I mean by this is when you're in third person, whenever you look in a certain direction, it takes a second for the barrel to match up in the spot that you're looking at. Unlike in first person, where your camera movements are the same as your barrel. Again, this sounds like a minimal change, but when you actually think about it, it makes the game seem even more fair. The trade-offs in first person are that you can't look around with an almost 180-degree vision, making you blind to enemies close to you or trying to navigate tricky terrain. While in third person, you can see almost entirely around you, being able to see enemies sneaking up on you or figuring out how to traverse the map, as well as easily turning your tank around in order to avoid gunfire. The downsides here are that you can't aim down sights wherever you look, and it'll take a second for your barrel to match up with the direction of the camera. This helps make tanks feel a little more clunky and harder to use, where it takes a little more time for them to fire and a little more time for them to move, so someone still has a chance to get close to the vehicle without it completely blowing them away, or others to take cover before it totally shreds them. So after going through all of these different aspects and changes made in Battlefield 5, I hope to leave you guys with a newfound appreciation for the game, if you haven't already after the launch of 2042, to show you how it may not have all been bad, and to find the good buried beneath the terrible launch was nice. Now, I don't want anyone to take this video the wrong way, since this isn't a total defense of the game. I still believe it was released in an unacceptable state with barely any content, and was mismanaged with its post-launch support trying to implement idiotic things such as a barebones battle royale mode, until it got its act together later in its life, on top of the bad marketing that did the game no favors whatsoever.
I'm here as a Battlefield player. I'm here to ask only the questions I'm interested in. You have made a horrible mistake.
However, this feels a little bit like a Star Wars Battlefront 2 situation, where it may have had a rough start and was rightfully ridiculed for it, but it was able to make a solid comeback, fixing good chunks of the game and overall getting it to a point where it should have been in the first place. The irony of all of this is the fact that the end of development for Battlefield 5 and even Battlefront 2 was to focus more on Battlefield 2042. So whenever the next entry is released, I hope that the changes made in this game make a comeback in the future, since I believe that it helped the overall experience and made it a blast to play. Whatever the case may be, I'll be playing more of Battlefield 5 until the next entry, that hopefully isn't dumpster fire, comes out. So until then, I hope to see you guys on the battlefield as well.